Here's the sled, and you can see the three components, the top piece, which is movable on the base, and there's a crank adjustment, which allows me to move the whole unit in and out at very small increments. I'm setting up the log, which is wet, so that it is as close to the blade and as parallel as possible. Once done, I'm going to make a reference cut. What I'm doing is sawing off a thin section so that the next cut will have parallel sides on both sides of the veneer. And you can see that is not equal, and this next cut will now be a nice piece of veneer about 1/8 of an inch thick, parallel on both sides, because we're putting no side pressure on that blade. The unit is being pulled by a rope that has a counterweight on it, helps to make it a nice steady saw process. And this is wet wood, so it's got to be slow, let the sawdust clear. On dry wood, it's a lot easier to saw, and you can see that what I'm doing is making sure that that table is at 90 degrees to the saw blade. The board is set up to be right up next to that saw blade and parallel at the front. Lock it in place, and we do the same thing on the back and lock it in place. Once we've got it all locked in, we're going to do a reference cut, and that's the throwaway. We will then recut the second piece, and that will be the first piece of veneer that is usable. So now we're going to adjust the sled and base unit in about 1/16 of an inch, and this is actually the usable veneer that will come off. It'll be rough and has to be sanded in order to make it usable, but that's a simple process. They're thick enough that when you're using these veneers, you cannot sand through it like you can some of the commercially bought veneers. The second piece is probably 3/32, but with that crank, you can actually make them all equal.